آه، صباح الخير أو مساء الخير حسب وين أنتم موجودين. Good morning everyone. Good evening. Depends where you are. My name is Ziad Abbas Shamrukh. I am part of Mecca team. I would like to thank every one of you for joining us today. And this is an important time for us, for everyone, and especially for what's going on in Gaza. And absolutely, we are witnessing the genocide, and it's really getting very hard for everyone. 68 days, and this genocide taking place in every part of Gaza Strip. Over 18,000 people killed, over 50 people injured, and still, these are not accurate numbers. It's changing minute by minute. And this genocide didn't start in October 7th. We had the slow genocide, which was started 16 years ago during the beginning of the siege. Thousands of people, they were killed in Gaza as a result of the siege. Right now, after October 7th, just the Zionist colonial system, they speed the genocide, where we see more people killed, including children, and women, and houses destroyed. Over 60% of Gaza already destroyed. And this is a hard and difficult time for everyone. And absolutely, we have our own responsibility as people, as a human being, to take an action. And we need to be aware of that. Any action we take, and every action can help save lives in Gaza. We need to remember that. Whatever we can do, we should do it immediately. This is something in our shoulders as people. And because Gaza exposed the world, exposed the value of the human being, exposed the international community. And the only choice right now, and the chance for the people in Gaza who survived, to survive is the people in the ground, in the streets, in every city, and everywhere in this world. It's up to us. We need to do what we need to do to stop this genocide. Anyway, I would like to start our event. This is a very important day for us. Even it's very hard for us. I'm not going to speak that much about it. My colleagues there, they will speak during their presentation and discussion. We lost some people too. We lost over 18,000 people in Gaza, and some of them, they are people related to us, connected to our work. And for the people they don't know about Mecca, we are a non-profit organization started 35 years ago. And we are working in Palestine and Lebanon, and many projects we have spread in all over Palestine, especially since 2008, 2009, we focused more in Gaza Strip. And luckily, I can say as an organization, we have our own staff members, 4 staff members in Gaza Strip working for Mecca there. And we have 3 staff members actually working in West Bank. And we learned from our own experience after every attack, like 2008, 2009, 2012, 2014, 2018, 2021, and now we are 2023. And I want to give the credit to all our partners, our volunteers, and our staff in Gaza Strip, because they helped us to continue to do what we can do to support. And if you want to learn about what we are doing, just go to Mecca website and you can learn about what we are doing. And by the way, we are still doing our work in the ground in Gaza. We used to do it in north of Gaza, but right now it is getting hard. But in other parts, we try to do as much as we can and do our best. At the same time, we are working from Cairo too, where we try to send the stuff from Cairo to Gaza Strip. And I can say we got 2 trucks already. They got to Gaza, and we got some stuff actually where it is in Rafah, and some of our partners and our volunteers, they are working on it to distribute it to the people. I'm not going to market Mecca here, but if you want to learn about the work we are doing, just go to our website. And at the same time, part of Mecca work all the time, all the years, we try to bring the people voices to the people here in the United States, all over the world. Now this is the time to listen and to hear the people they are living under the ground. People they are experiencing what's going on in genocide in Gaza or the other slow genocide, I can say it in West Bank. And luckily we have today actually two amazing speakers, and they will have their own discussions. And they are very close to us. And I'm not going to speak because my colleague, she will introduce Musab to you. But I would like to introduce actually my colleague, Waad Abbasi, which is one of our consultants. She's working with us for a while, and she's moving all over West Bank and Gaza Strip. Waad is working as a consultant with us, and she, sorry. Yeah, and Waad just finished her master's degree actually in humanitarian action with the focus on statelessness and focused migration. Before she joined Mecca, she worked with many other organizations, international organizations, including Amnesty International, Save the Children, and Palestinian Children Relief Fund. And Waad, she's one of our colleague, and she's in Jerusalem, and here we go. We try to bring the voices from Jerusalem and the voices from Gaza Strip. At the same time, just I want to remind the people too, West Bank is not doing that much better than Gaza, but they are living under a huge attack recently, and the settlers, they are lashing everywhere in different parts actually, especially in Hebron area and other villages near Ramallah. And we are watching what's going on in Jenin. Like 8 people, they were killed, and the attacks in the Freedom Theater, and arrested some of our colleagues in the Freedom Theater. In any case, I want to bring Waad to you, and she will start. And thank you, and good luck.
Thank you so much, Ziad. Thank you, Musab, for being here, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We know these circumstances are not the easiest, but it's really important to have Musab and his voice, especially in these during hard times. Let me start with introducing Mosab. Mosab Abu Toha, we're honored to introduce him today as the acclaimed Palestinian poet and author. He's the founder of the Edward Said Libraries in the occupied Gaza. Mosab's inspirational work has appeared in major outlets across the world, including The New Yorker and other major publications. His book, Things You May Find Hidden in My Ear, was nominated to and won several local and international awards since his publication last year alone. And Musab's words from his poems, they have echoed across the world, and hopefully today we're going to get to hear some of them at some point during our sessions. So first of all, thank you, Musab, for being here. We know it's not easy. We are selfishly relieved that you are out of Gaza at the moment, not under the hail of rockets and bombings. And we say selfishly because we're aware of the situation that's currently unfolding. Maybe let's start with, it's not an understatement to say that as Palestinians, we've been going through this collective sense of mourning it's for the past few years now, but specifically since the last couple of months, since the 7th of October onwards. We've been getting heartbroken over this tremendous loss that's happening as a people, but also, we've lost people we know. And coming to you, you've also come to terms with huge loss during this war on Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and across the rest of Palestine. You've lost colleagues, you've lost friends, and you've lost loved ones from your family. We're speaking here about Dua, we're speaking here about Refaat, and we're speaking here about Nasim. And we'll give you the room now to, if that's okay with you, of course, to maybe tell us a little bit more about them, about this loss, and how we can remember them. I'll give the mic to you.
Thank you so much, Waad. Thank you, Ziad. Thank you, Mecca. And a big thanks to everyone who is attending this event. And I recognize a lot of dear names to me from across the world. I'm talking to you today from Cairo, where I'm safe. Partly safe with my wife and kids. I feel safe here, but part of me, my mind and my heart, are not safe because I left not only Gaza as a city, but Gaza as a family. My parents, my 2 brothers and their children, my 3 sisters and their kids. The youngest was 2 months when the war started. So there are many things that I left behind. And after I left Gaza, I learned about the catastrophic death of Dua al-Masri, a dear friend and a colleague at the Edward Said Library. I remember Dua, she was just about 25 years old. I remember her as an energetic person, someone who loved to play with the kids. And you can see here a picture of Dua standing outside one of the rooms of the Edward Said Library. She loved to organize a lot of things for the kids. And this is one of the purposes why the Edward Said Library was created. It's to have as many kids around books, around colors, around songs and the music. But now the only music that is played in Gaza is the music of death. And this musician is not getting tired because it's getting more fuel and fuel from the American administration. And the problem, I mean, as with every war, Dua was not killed alone. She was killed with her parents and her siblings. And this is not only the problem. The problem is that her body and the bodies of her families are still under the rubble of her house. So this is not a war against the living people, but it's also a war against the dead people. There is no respect even during death. And we have this one saying in Arabic, "Ikram al-mayyit dafno." So if you want to dignify a dead person, you should bury him. So there is no dignity even after we are killed by this barbaric killing machine. And then, I mean, I learned about Dua's death just a few minutes after I learned about Refaat Al-Areer's death. Professor Refaat Al-Areer was someone like a big brother to me. He's someone that loved John Donne as a poet and as a person. He loved to teach Shakespeare plays and sonnets. He loved to mentor young writers. And the first book that he edited is called Gaza Writes Back, Stories from Gaza, in 2014. Refaat was someone who loved strawberries, as you can see in this picture that I took of him 2 years ago. Whenever I returned from a trip in the United States, Refaat would visit me and then ask me to take him to the strawberry farms, to the one that my father-in-law plants every year. And these strawberries that he is holding in his hand are the ones that we both picked. And he never forgets to take some strawberries to his mother, his aging mother, and his children and wife. Someone says something about the pictures are not being displayed. Oh, I think there is maybe a technical issue here. I'm not sure. Oh, some people say I can't see them. Okay. Thank you so much. So I'm looking at Refaat now. He's talking to me. He's telling me, Mosab, I know this year there are no strawberries because of the Israeli war. But next year, you should pick some strawberries and put some on my grave. And unfortunately, I know I'm imagining this conversation with him, but till now, I don't know if he was buried or not. Refaat was in a school. This was reported by Dr. Rami Abdo, a dear friend of his. He is in the United States, in the UK. He reported that Refaat got a phone call when he was in a school with his family in Gaza, And he got this phone call from the Israeli army telling him that they can locate him and he should leave this school because they are going to kill him. So it seems like Refaat had to leave this school, and he wanted to visit his sister for a last moment. And when he entered his sister's house, he was bombed. So he lost his life along with the lives of his sister and her husband and their 4 children. So Refaat was not only a personal loss to me, he was a huge fan of my poetry, and he even taught my book last year, and he hosted me in one of his poetry classes. But Refaat was a huge loss for the Palestinian community, literary community, because he was a mentor, he was a translator, he was something like a journalist. He was reporting, he was telling the world about what he could see, how he could feel, etc. And I don't think that Gaza would replace him. Just like the world has failed to replace someone like Edward Said and Mahmoud Darwish. So Refaat was the Edward Said of Gaza, I would think. And just 2 days after the death of Refaat, or 3, I'm not sure of the dates. So this Sunday, so I got the news that my wife's uncle, Nasim Abu Toha. So Nasim means a breeze. Refaat means of highness. Dua means a prayer. So this is Nasim. Nasim was born deaf and mute. And he was a father of 2. The youngest is 1 year old. Nasim was taken from the Khalifa bin Zayed Honorable School in North Gaza in Beit Lahia, where I used to live. He was taken from that school along with hundreds of other young people. He was taken to the Kamal Udwan hospital. He was stripped of his clothes. And then after some interrogation, he was let to go. So the next morning, on Sunday, so that was a Saturday, on Sunday, Nasim, along with his other older deaf and mute brother, they were on their way to the honorable school where they left their families. And at the gate of the school, and we have a photo, I'm not sure if they have it, we have a photo of Nasim on the ground in a white, you can see there, in a white dress here, white pants and white t-shirt. And there is the sign of the Palestinian Red Crescent. And I asked his brother, Sari, who now is staying in Deir al-Balah, in the middle of the Gaza Strip. I asked him, is Nasim by any chance working with the medical staff, etc.? He said no. After Nasim was stripped off his clothes, when he went to the hospital, there were no clothes for him. So the only clothes he could find were the medical staff uniform. So you know by now why he is wearing white. So he was shot at the gate of the school, along with his other deaf and mute brother, Ramadan. And his body was left outside, as you can see in the picture. And next to him are is a blanket and his slippers, I can see. So Nasim was deaf and mute. But my hope is that the scream of his death would break the walls of silence around this world. And there is also the loss of my family house in Beit Lahia. I lost many things. I lost my books, the books that I started to collect starting in 2016. After each trip, I used to bring some books with me from the States. In 2021, in February, I returned to Gaza for the first time. And I decided to leave some clothes and some shoes and put some books in their places. And I brought with me from the US about 120 books. in its, I mean, in themselves are a small library. And then the second time I returned in 2022, 2023, this year in May. And I brought about 70 books with me, and some of them signed by dear friends. And I think some of them are attending this event. Richard Hoffman, I have Kathy Angel, Peter Balakian. I mean, dear friends of mine. So this is also another loss, to lose the books that you held very dear to you, signed by great friends. And my children themselves, and this is also not only about my children, but this is about all Palestinian children. Palestinian children have lost their childhood. I mean, for a child, instead of going to a school to learn how to draw and how to write and how to play tennis or soccer ball, they are now staying at classrooms. This is in case they are still staying, because many of them have been expelled even from schools. And instead of being at a classroom learning, they are now staying at a classroom in fear. And they are now learning how to survive. So now if a child is 3 years old, now they have turned 10 or maybe 15. If a child is 10, now he is a grown-up. So there is the loss of childhood. And I personally lost my childhood. I wrote a poem called Leaving Childhood Behind, because when I left my home first in 2009, I was in 2008, I was still 16. When I left my home, I left my childhood behind, because there were just too many great things that only grown-ups, and even grown-ups do not have to face these dangers, these risks, you know. So there is the loss also. I lost my touch with my family, especially my parents and my siblings. I don't know anything about them. I don't know if they are still alive or not. And this is the case of so many people that I can read from through Telegram channels. Everyone is asking, does anyone know about this person? Can anyone tell us if they heard about this person being dead or what? So things are really, really miserable in Gaza. They are made miserable, not by Israel, but by the whole governments of the world, especially the United States government, who vetoed a ceasefire, a humanitarian one.
Thank you, Musab, for sharing all of this. It's beyond, this loss is beyond anything I think we'll ever come to terms with. I mean, you spoke about, losing loved ones, but you also spoke about losing memories, losing kind of valuable objects and things that, that are part of our identities and who we are. And you also spoke of losing childhood. It's a lot of loss that I believe there are generations to come to deal with this. And I mean, we would love to get back to kind of talk more about your family and what's the situation now. But also, if we go back to what happened and is still happening in Gaza, if we go back to your own experience, Gaza has been under siege for at least 17 years. As Ziad has said, this does not start on October 7th. It's only intensified 10 times more. But since then, since Gaza was under Israeli siege, and the situation has been beyond difficult on different fronts that we can discuss, but also there hasn't been like a physical Israeli soldiers presence within the occupied Gaza. And we've heard from people saying, like, I haven't seen Israeli soldiers since 2002, and now they are in our streets, in our homes with their tanks. And unfortunately, in November, you came face to face with one of them, where you were literally kidnapped and abducted. And I know this is a very hard topic to discuss, but your testimony, you're a witness and also someone who dealt with this directly, where you were luckily and thankfully released, but we know about the hundreds, if not thousands, that are still even, they're not even acknowledged, quote unquote, legally, of where they are, what's happening to them, what's their situation. So if you're able to share a little bit about your own experience, to shed light on what's happening kind of in the dark without being reported enough.
Yeah. So I was at least lucky to have an American son who is 3.5 years old. So when the American Department of State announced that American citizens and their immediate family members could apply for an evacuation list, I applied for that. We got our names listed on November 4th, and we tried multiple times to leave the north to the south of Gaza, where the Rafah border crossing is. So the first time I tried was on November 5th, and some of the people who went before us trying to cross from the north to the south told us that there is some gunfire at the checkpoint, so they had to return, and there was some heaps of sand around blocking the road. So we decided not to go. The next time I tried to go, my children were sick, 2 of them. Then the third time, it was November 18th. It was the morning of November 18th, and I saw dozens of people coming to our school from Al-Fakhura school, which is an honorable school, which has been bombed for a few times. So they told us that the Israeli army had bombed 2 classrooms. So the people started to run away. And then a few minutes after that, we heard about the bombing of Tel Za'atar school, which is a school in Beit Lahia, where I live. In that school, there was my wife's grandparents and the 3 of her uncles. And we heard about the bombing of another 2 classrooms on the 2nd floor, and 50 people were killed. So I hurried to that school. I went first to see the Al-Fakhura school, and I saw the destruction there. And then I moved on towards the Tel Za'atar school, where my wife's family members are. So I arrived there, and it was shocking. I mean, there were about 5 donkeys bleeding and 2 horses about to die from the shrapnel. The big tree at the gate of the school was cut, and it was blocking half of the gate of the school. And then I entered the school, and the people were just gathering their belongings to leave the school. And then I saw my wife's grandparents and uncles. I helped them to move to our school. Now, November 19th, the following day, one of her uncles came to our school in the Jabalia refugee camp, and he told us about his plan to move to the south. And then I told Maram, my wife, I mean, you think we should go with them so we could be together? And she said, yes, we are ready. Then I picked our things, and we looked for a car, but we didn't find any taxi. So the only option we had was a donkey cart, which would take us on our more than 12 kilometers away. So it was a long trip, and there were hundreds and hundreds of people, some people on wheelchairs, some aging people, and some people were carrying white flags. As for us, we had my wife's brother, Ibrahim, who was 15 years old. He was having a white undershirt, which he tied to a stick we found on the way on the donkey cart. So he started to raise that white flag. So when we arrived at the Al-Kuwait roundabout, there were just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people holding up their Palestinian ID cards. When it was our turn, there was this Israeli tank on which there were 2 soldiers, and the tank, the only function it had was to control the flow of the people going into the checkpoint. So when it moves backward, then people are allowed to go. When it moves forward, then it means stop. So when it was our turn, I just had to join the line of people going southward. And then I heard an Israeli soldier, and everywhere there were Israeli soldiers pointing their guns at us. So there was that line of people, which I joined with my family. I was carrying my American boy, who had a red hair, and also his American passport. I was just trying to show it to the Israeli soldier like this. And also along with, and behind that passport were our Palestinian passports. And then all of a sudden, the Israeli soldier called me by description. He said, the young man with a black backpack and a red-haired boy, put the boy down and drop your bags and come here. And I thought of taking my son and the passport to him. He was on a little hill under an open tent, and next to him there were 3 snipers, and to his left there were 3 snipers. So I thought of approaching him and just talking to them very quickly. I thought it was just, you know, something that I would just resolve very quickly. But he said, drop the boy down and your bags and come. So I left my son. So not only did I leave my childhood when I was a child, but now I'm leaving my child. And it was very scary that I didn't look back to make sure that he joined his mother. So I sat there for about half an hour, and more and more people were called out. Then I heard my name, full name, Mosab Abu Toha. And then I looked at my right, and there was an Israeli jeep that I wasn't aware was there. And there was an Israeli sniper next to him on the front. In the front seat was someone calling by names, and they asked me to recite my ID number. After I recited my number, my ID number, I was asked to sit next to 10 people on my right. So I looked behind, and there were 10 people sitting. And after about 10 minutes, we were called 2 by 2. And we were asked to raise our hands, and then we were ordered 2. So there was a wall behind which there was another Israeli jeep with 2 snipers and a third soldier with a megaphone, ordering us to take off our clothes. So I took off my sweater and my pants, and then I waited for a second, and he said, go on, take off your boxer shorts. And then the person next to me, so we were called 2 by 2. We looked at each other. I mean, we were very shocked and surprised, and we had to listen to what they were saying. So I took off my boxer short, and that was the first time in my life I am naked outside of my house. And then they took everything from me. They returned only my pants and my sweater. They took my jacket, which had my wallet and my money. And then one of the soldiers opened my wallet, and he saw my UNRWA employee card, which had my picture. And he said, UNRWA. He talked to his colleague. And I said, yes, in Arabic. I said, yes, I'm a teacher. And he said, shut up, you mother. And then that was the first assault. And I felt terrorized by their way of speaking to me. And then I was taken, I was handcuffed, I was blindfolded, and then I was dragged from my neck towards another tent up the hill. And then I was interrogated. I started to speak to them in English. And all the time, by the way, even when they took me to, I'm going to explain to you, I kept saying, please, someone talk to me. Please, someone talk to me. But no one talked to me. So I was taken to that place just next to the place where I was stripped off my clothes. I started to speak to them in English about myself. They asked me about my name, my ID card number, and then I started to explain to them about myself. I told them about my fellowship at Harvard and my education at Syracuse University, about my poetry book, about my awards, etc. And then he said, you are a Hamas activist. We were told by some other people from Hamas that you are a Hamas activist. Where are the hostages? Where are Hamas's tunnels? As if I was with any hostage, as if, many people, even from Hamas themselves, do not know where the hostages are. Even some Hamas leaders, even military, do not know where the hostages are. How come you ask me where the hostages are? If I knew anything about the hostages, I wouldn't come this way. So I told, when he said, you are Hamas, I told him, do you have any proof? Do you have any evidence, any photo, any video of me carrying a gun or being close to the border or doing? And he slapped me in my face. He said, I give you evidence, you give me proof. And that was the second assault. And then I was dragged around just like a sheep. I was blindfolded. It was rainy that day. It was windy. It was cold. I was shivering. And then they sat us in another tent, and the rain started to enter the tent we were sitting, and I was my teeth were just chattering, and there is another soldier who was just slapping us on our necks, saying, "You raped our women. You killed our children." And we were just swearing, it's not, we didn't do anything. I mean, we are not Hamas. We are not, I mean, maybe next time I should tell them, oh, I'm not a human being. I'm not a human being. Don't hit me. I'm just a stone. Just leave me. I mean, this was very barbaric. This was very crazy. This was unjustified. And later I was taken in a military truck and they threw someone in my lap. I didn't see anything. There were 2 Israeli soldiers sitting behind me. And then they threw someone in my lap. And that body, to me, it was a corpse. It wasn't moving at all. I thought they were just throwing bodies onto me as a type of punishment. And then a few minutes later, I asked this body, I mean, are you alive? And he whispered to me, yes, I'm alive. And then I kept silent. Then they took us to a place, I don't know where. So no one told us where they're taking us, what they were going to do to us. Then the military truck stopped. And then I heard a brief gunshot. And then I said to myself, maybe that's where they will execute us. And then I hoped and I prayed that I would die, that I would get a heart attack and just finish with all of this. But then I remembered my wife and my children. And I was thinking of them because the Israeli soldier who questioned me said, we stopped your wife and the children at the next checkpoint. So he threatened me with my family. And then, I mean, it was a long trip. Then we were taken into a detention facility, something like an open, a big place, but it had no walls. It was surrounded by fences. And then there was a high ceiling. So I was taken there. I didn't know where they were taking us. So, but there was someone who spoke Arabic like us and who is one of the detainees, but he was used by the Israelis to help us, let's say, I mean, go to the toilet, maybe feed us. He was not handcuffed. He was not blindfolded. So everything was removed for him to help us. So I heard him saying, we are in Beersheba, in the Negev desert. And when people just kept asking him and begging him to get them water, he said, come on, guys, there are just 100 people here. It's not only you. So I learned that it was not only me or the 10 people or so that were in the same truck. Then, so that was Sunday, November 19. So the next day I was taken into an interrogation. The blindfold was removed. Instead of the plastic handcuff, they put on a metal handcuff in my hand and also around my feet. So I just imagined myself going into a court and maybe then getting a sentence or so. So I started to talk to the interrogator about myself, etc. So it was, let's say, a friendly conversation. I told him about myself, etc. He said, okay, we will check the information you gave us and you should be patient. It would take a few days, etc. But then when I was let out of the room, I was blindfolded again and taken to the bed outside of the interrogation facility. It was night. The soldier at the door who was going to take me back to the detention facility said in English, he said, we are sorry about the mistake. You are going home. I mean, and then I heard another one saying, is this the writer? Is this the journalist? I wasn't aware what was going on around the world. But later I learned about the pressure that was put by major American newspapers and magazines, and also the CNN, and also PEN International and PEN America, etc. So the following day, Tuesday, at 10 p.m., at 10 in the morning, I think, they called out for me, and I was taken. I mean, there are lots of details that you will be reading, and you should anticipate this in the New Yorker. I'm about to finish writing it, so you should read everything in the New Yorker. But then I was driven back to the Netzarim checkpoint where I was taken on Sunday, and I didn't know where to go. I couldn't find my wife and children, so I started looking for them, and finally I could find them in Deir al-Balah. She was with her maternal uncles, and I stayed there for a few days with them, and those were some of the difficult days in my life.
I mean, I don't even know where to begin, Mosab. We know this must be even torture to share about the torture that you've been exposed to, and to think that this is happening to hundreds and thousands others that aren't able to even speak about what's happened to them is beyond anything. And it's important to kind of point out two things based on what you said. Is first, like, it's, you know, they are saying they are detaining Hamas, either activists or militants or whatever, but we see they are detaining journalists, they are detaining doctors, they are detaining poets, they are detaining writers, and amazing people one after the other, and putting them through these horrible, beyond horrible circumstances. And also this whole notion, you know, this whole narrative that all Palestinians are kind of criminalized in this sense, and we see this translate on the ground. It wasn't just their words in the media and statements, they are translating it, as we can see. So thank you so much for sharing. I wish we had more than an hour, because I feel like there's a lot we want to go into, and there are so many questions we've been receiving. But maybe, because I think maybe two things before we go to the questions segment. So now you're in Cairo, now you're in Egypt. As we said, we're selfishly happy that you are. But tell us, maybe if you could share with us a little bit more, how is it? Because you mentioned your family, you haven't been able to get in touch with them. How is that? How has that been like, to say the least? And I know maybe like the second part of this, if you could cover as well, is we know it's very hard during these times to kind of, you know, like snatch any kind of glimpse of hope, but we have been seeing, you know, people mobilizing around the world every single day, whether it was cold, whether it was whatever the circumstances were, whether they were detained. People are going outside and, you know, screaming for a ceasefire, screaming for a free Palestine, and screaming for justice. So, you know, and even like Refaat himself, which I just realized we haven't. We wanted to share some of his words, we'll get to that. But he himself said, you know, if he ever, you know, if he's killed, if he dies, let it bring hope. So I'll leave this with you to tell us a little bit more about, before we get back to hear more from the people who have so many questions, as we could both of us could see.
Well, first of all, I was lucky, and I was unlucky to leave Gaza. I feel like I'm a guilty person, because, I mean, not only person, I mean, this should bring guilt to everyone in the world. Why would someone with a foreign nationality be able to leave Gaza and be safe, let's say, and not the whole of Gazans could be safe by imposing a ceasefire? So are American people, like my son and their family members, like me and my wife and 2 other kids, are they more worthy of life than the Gazans now who are under fire? So, I mean, every one of us have the responsibility for every single life in Gaza. We are responsible. I mean, this war is unlike World War the First or the Second. Now you see us live. We send you photos and pictures, and we send you our screams live. You hear us. But I'm not talking about people. I mean, I can see that thousands of people, millions of people are with us and trying to change. But I'm talking about these evil regimes in the world. who are ignoring our calls for a ceasefire, for a stop to our wounds, for someone to heal our never-ending misery and helplessness. And as Ziad mentioned, this, I mean, the misery of the Palestinian people in Gaza and the West Bank and outside and inside did not start on November 7th. We have been killed. I personally was wounded in 2009. I was 16. And no one ever tried to protect me or my children now after what happened to me and to many other hundreds of thousands of Gazans and West Bankers. So it happened before. What did you try to do to stop it and to change the reality of the people in Gaza and the West Bank? So you continue to ignore Palestinians. You continue to support Israel with its right to defend itself. But unfortunately, okay, everyone has the right to defend themselves. But this defending of oneself does not mean that you should kill children and women. You could defend yourself by killing militants who raided your cities or towns. You can protect yourself by killing. Okay, these are, let's say, legitimate targets. But my children, my parents, my pregnant, my younger brother's pregnant wife is not a target. You cannot destroy schools. Yesterday, I saw the Israeli soldiers chanting and very excited about the blowing up of 2 UNRWA schools. Where is UNRWA? I want to see UNRWA now. I want to see the United Nations. There's a video of Israeli soldiers celebrating live the bombing of 2 UNRWA schools where my children used to go. So is the United States going to veto a ceasefire? So are you depriving us of our not right to live, but also right to learn when this stops? So there should be a ceasefire. The ceasefire is not about Hamas. It's about the children and women. You cannot kill someone's boy because they are criminal, let's say. This is illegal. This is illegitimate. This is inhuman. And I would like to read Refaat's poem, If I Must Die. Refaat wrote this poem in October, and he pinned it to his Twitter account. And I hope this message, his message, would reach everyone in the world. Refaat wrote, if I must die. If I must die, you must live to tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings, make it white with a long tail, so that a child somewhere in Gaza, while looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dad who left in a blaze, and bid no farewell, not even to his flesh, not even to himself, sees the kite, my kite you made, flying up above, and thinks for a moment an angel is there, bringing back love. If I must die, let it bring hope. Let it be a tale.
Thank you so much. I hope indeed it does bring hope, because it's the last thing we're hanging on now, and hope is a good thing. I think before moving, we're going to move to the Q&A, because people have so many things they'd like to ask you and hear back from you, and this is your space, as we have said. But we forgot to thank, because we are so appreciative of our co-sponsors for this event. We want to thank Palestine Rights and also Mosab's publisher, City Lights. Thank you so much for supporting us. And also just to say that we at Mecca, we have Mosab's book. If you want to purchase it, please feel free to visit our website. We can share it here in the chat. And, it's beyond, you have to read it. These are important words. Let them continue to echo as they have been. Let's move now to the questions. We have so many, so I might ask some help from my colleagues here. But we can start maybe with one of the first questions we've received. So Mosab, here the question says, how are poets and poetry are part of the resistance? And what is it, do you think Israel's reason for targeting writers? Are other creative people targeted, like visual artists, musicians, and so on?
Well, poetry and other forms of writing are a means of resistance. And by this, I mean, resistance is not only about fighting an enemy with a weapon, but just by keeping the memory of your beloved ones, your loved ones, documenting your feelings and sharing it with the outside world who doesn't have any access except through your words as a poet, as a creative writer. So this is a kind of resistance. You resist the erasure of memory and experience. Because without writing, without poetry in my case, the world would never know about my suffering, about my feelings, about my emotions, about my humanity, because I think poetry is the highest form of humanity, the highest embodiment of humanity.
Thank you so much. Yeah, go ahead.
So, and everyone in Gaza is targeted, but most are the journalists, the writers, especially the poets. And I think Refaat was killed because not only was he an articulate speaker, but he was a mentor, was a professor of a generation that Israel is afraid of.
Indeed, and we have seen that, journalists were directly threatened, authors were directly threatened, and eventually we've seen one, and I'm sorry to say news, but we've been seeing these news kind of come up one after the other of losing these amazing people. Someone said in the chat at some point, he said Refaat is the Edward Said of Gaza, others said he's Ghassan Kanafani, and we know Ghassan Kanafani was assassinated because of the power of his word. Maybe to move to another question that comes on, if you want to go back to the hope bit. So this is from Faris. Shukran, Mosab, for speaking to us today about the ongoing situation in Gaza. The question is as follows: what more can we Palestinians in diaspora do to continue the momentum and conversation as it pertains to Palestinian liberation?
Well, I mean, I think the Palestinian community outside has been very active and very supportive, as we can see, especially the Palestine Rights Festival that Mosab Abu Toha organized for the second time. This is very important. I think continue to spread the word and to organize more activities to share personal stories of Palestinian writers. We are not numbers. We have the Palestine Rights Festival. These are two major ways to support the Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank and in the diaspora. So as Refaat in one of his posts said, never stop talking about Palestine. So this is not only about the Palestinian in the diaspora, but this is also to my friends. And I see many familiar names on the chat and also in the Q&A. And here I would love to thank Askol Melnichek for his activism and his support. Many familiar friends. I mean, the Palestinian case is not only for the Palestinian, it's a universal issue. It represents, I mean, if you stand with Palestine, you stand with justice. You don't have to be, I mean, President Biden said, you don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist. And I say, you don't have to be Palestinian to love Palestine. You should have only to be a human being to support Palestine.
Thank you so much for this, Mosab. Indeed, it's not the Palestinian cause. It's not just about the Palestinian people. It's about anyone who cares about justice. We have another question personally to you on what's based on what's been happening. So the question says, how do you balance your need to tell your story as you just did today and you continue to do, and what has been happening in Gaza with the danger that doing so might come to you and to your family who are still in Gaza? Tell us, I mean, we know we're touching on a nerve here because the fear must be there, but as the question said, how is this balance there and how do you continue to go on from there?
So the question is about how I balance between the need to speak and also the safety of my family.
And yeah, because it's something you can't guarantee, but something you need to deal with, as many have to deal with, but especially in your situation, since you're outspoken.
I can see that this question is posted by an anonymous attendee, and I'm not sure if this is a threatening.
Hopefully not.
Because are you fearful of retaliation? I'm not sure what is meant here.
Okay.
But my family in Gaza is just like every family, and I was just like everyone. You don't have to speak up for Palestine or Gaza to be killed. I mean, children were killed. I mean, people at UNRWA schools where they were seeking shelter were killed. So you don't have to be a writer. You don't have to be a journalist to be killed or to have your family killed. You just have to be Gazans. You have to be Palestinian. And you should be fearful of retaliation because you were born as a Palestinian. That's the only reason why should you be fearful.
Thank you, Mosab, for speaking up as you have been. Looking through the questions as well, let me know if there is something specific you were looking at that you thought it's important to address. Something we haven't covered. There's a lot of love, by the way, a lot of love, a lot of appreciation, which we always need to cling on. And I think if there's nothing too pressing, maybe let's end it because I think we have something like 5 minutes. Maybe let's end it with one of your own poems. We want to hear your own words, and we're going to end it here. So just to say thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for telling people about this and continue to talk about Palestine. And thank you, Mosab, of course. We realize this hasn't been the easiest. And we will continue to speak up as you are, and we will continue to do the best we can to speak about Palestine, to organize for Palestine, to demand for a ceasefire, and not just a ceasefire, but also to hold those responsible accountable, because no war criminal should go on his life or her life normally as others have, or like you said, we haven't been able to bury people in a dignified way. So I'll end it with you to share with us your own words. Yeah, thank you so much.
So before I read one of my poems, I would love to thank my audience and the many friends who couldn't make it. I mean, your love to me, your support is the reason why I have a lot of hope, even though there is no sign of hope in Gaza. But just reading your words and attending this event means that there is a light of hope that we should continue to have. I'm going to read one poem that is, maybe I kept reading this poem everywhere I go. Unfortunately, this poem continues to repeat itself in different areas. I wrote this poem after the massacre of At-Tanani family, when both of the parents and their 4 children were killed under the rubble of their house. And unfortunately, now, 1 year and a half after that massacre, after the May 2021 attack, this continues to happen, and it happened to the family of Refaat, to the family of my friend Ismail Abu Ghabin, an Arabic language teacher who fled the north as Israel directed and had found a place to stay in Al-Nusayrat in the south. But he was killed just one night before that the week-long truce about 2 weeks ago. So I'm going to read this poem, Shrapnel Looking for Laughter. Shrapnel looking for laughter. The house has been bombed. Everyone's dead. The kids, the parents, the toys, the actors on TV, characters in novels, personas in poetry collections, the I, the he, and the she. No pronouns is left, not even for kids when they learn parts of speech next year. Shrapnel flies in the dark, looks for the family's peals of laughter, hiding behind piles of disfigured walls and bleeding picture frames. The radio no longer speaks. Its batteries have burned. The antenna is broken. Even the broadcaster felt the pain when the radio was hit. Even we, hearing the bomb as it fell, threw ourselves to the ground, each of us counting the others around them. We were safe, but our hearts still ache. Stop this war, ceasefire now. Please continue to post this hashtag and continue to call your representatives and senators to put more pressure on this evil regime.